21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
So here are the success strategies that I utilized to recover from losing $50 million in 2008 and 9, and candidly, to have $50 million to lose in the first place. My name is Rod Khleif. I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert, my mother's Vansha. I actually was born in the Netherlands, think wooden shoes and windmills. And we immigrated and ended up in Denver, Colorado. And we didn't have much growing up. In fact, I remember we ate food from an expired food store. Believe it or not, they had that back then. And we drank powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And I wore hand-me-down clothes from the Goodwill all the way through junior high school till I finally lied about my age when I was 14 because I was tall and you had to be 15 to go work at Burger King. And I got a job at Burger King flipping burgers so I could buy my own clothes. And, I'm sure there are people listening that had it harder than I did, or maybe even have it harder now with all the economic uncertainty, but I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And we always had a house full of kids. But with her babysitting money, she was a bit of an entrepreneur. She actually invested in the stock market successfully with no formal education and also in real estate. Now, her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street from us that she bought when I was about 14 years old for $30,000. And then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep, that it had gone up $20,000. Now, keep in mind, this is 1977 when $20,000 was a lot of money. And I said, "What? You made $20,000? You didn't do anything? Screw college. I'm getting into real estate." So I got into real estate and I was going to be rich in real estate. Well, I was still living at home. My first year in real estate, I made about $8,000. My second year, I made about $10,000. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent change. So what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I met a guy, I was actually working for him, he was the broker I was working for, that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology and how 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the real estate stuff we talk about on these podcasts. Fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term. I own thousands and thousands of apartment units right now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so big I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or the universe will give you a nice little correction, a little slap down. Well, that was 2008 and 9. That's when I lost $50 million conservatively. And so, what I'm known for talking about on my podcast, and I'm blessed to host the largest real estate podcast really in the world for commercial real estate. It's called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. And what I'm known for talking about on that show is the mindset it took to have $50 million to lose. And like I say, more importantly, the mindset strategies that I used to have it, and then the mindset strategies I used to recover from it. So let's talk about that a little bit. So, I teach people how to buy apartment complexes, and I'll brag from them. My students own, I believe, upwards of 300,000 apartment units under my tutelage, okay? Something I'm very proud of. And so, I do boot camps. So I do a virtual boot camp every couple of months, and I've got one coming up. And the first thing we do is goal setting on steroids, because how do you get anything if you don't know what it is you want? You've got to know what it is you want and create a hunger and create a burning desire. And, and that's what I did when I lost everything, is I reassociated with my goals to get back on track. It would have been real easy to focus on the loss, but whatever you focus on gets bigger, both positive or negative. And so I needed to focus on my goals again. And so that's the first thing we do, is goal setting at my boot camps. And we determine what you want and why you want it, because that's how you push through fear. That's how you push through limiting beliefs. That's how you get uncomfortable. Okay. That comfort zone's a nice warm place, and we all know nothing grows there, right? And so you've got to have the goals to push through. And then the next piece is you've got to make a decision. And I don't mean dip your toe in the water. I don't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You've got to just decide enough is enough. I'm going to go do this. And when you make that decision, you're committed. And the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. If you're going to attack the island in battle, you burn your ships because you're taking their damn ships home. That's a decision. It's done. It's locked, right? And so, and then once you've made that decision, you're committed. You're like a train on a track. If you're just interested and you don't commit and you don't make a firm decision, you're going to get knocked off track. You see, motivation will get you started, but that commitment is what brings you home. And so that's the next piece of the decision. So I made a decision to crawl out from under the rock I was hiding under when I lost 50 million and get off my ass and go make stuff happen again. And so that's the next piece, is the first step. You've got to take that first step. And that could be the greatest step of your life. Dr. Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed. Lao Tzu said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but you got to take that first step. A lot of people listen to my podcast and this one, and they're analytical. And you know who you are, and I love you, and you're some of the most successful people in this business, because my business, buying apartment complexes, is very empirical. It's numbers. And so you need the analysis. But I also know that you very often need to check off every box before you make a move. And I'm going to tell you, don't do that. You're not going to see the whole pathway, but you got to take that first step in faith. I see it with my students, my coaching students. They're called my warriors that own all those units I was just talking about. And I call it the law of the first deal. That first deal, it's the scariest. It takes the longest. It's the most stressful. And students 4 months in, 6 months in, sometimes even 8 months in, and I'm kicking them in the butt. Come on, you got this. You can do it. And then they get one. And next thing I know, they have 3. I'm like, what just happened? They realize it's all between their ears. Don't fear failure. Fear regret. Regret is much worse. And I'll tell you why. There was this nurse in Australia. Her name was Bronnie Ware. And so she was a hospice nurse, and she took care of patients when they were about to die. And she asked them a question. And you know what the question was? She asked them, do you have any regrets? And she wrote a book about it. It's a bestseller, something like the 5 Regrets of Dying or something like that. But you know what the number one regret was? Not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. Listen, fear that. Don't fear failure. I call my failures seminars, okay? That was a $50 million seminar. It was an expensive freaking seminar. But, it's only a failure if you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson, right? And, I've built 29 businesses so far in my career. Literally 29. I counted. I couldn't believe it. And several worth tens of millions of dollars. I have 2 right now that are. But most were spectacular, flaming seminars, okay? Failures. Because we fail our way to success. Now let's talk about fear and limiting beliefs for a moment. So what is fear? F everything and run? That's what some people think it is. But see, I like to believe it's false evidence appearing real, because it is. And I also like to think it's face everything and rise, because everybody has fear. It's the successful people that push through in spite of it. So I'll tell you a story about limiting beliefs as well. Okay. And that is, when I immigrated to this country, I didn't speak English and I got thrown into school, and I found out what bullies were for the first time. So I got my butt kicked occasionally. Hadn't learned how to fight back yet. And then my mom thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in these right here. Hang on. I got them down here. These wooden shoes and these leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest. Okay. It's like crack cocaine for the freaking bullies. So I got my ass kicked again. And then the bullies would chase me home, and she'd chase them off with a fly swatter. So the next day, ass beaten. And I came up with this belief system that I wasn't good enough. And I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? Now, you see, a lot of people have negative belief systems like this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not courageous enough. I'm not analytical enough. That was another one of mine. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. And if you're consciously aware of one of these limiting belief systems, drag it out in the daylight. Look at it with your adult rational mind, and you'll see that it's actually BS. The acronym for belief systems is BS, because 99% of them they have no basis in fact, but we believe they're real. So if you're consciously aware of it, drag it out in the daylight, look at it, and it will dissipate. I used to be afraid to raise my hand in front of a classroom of 10 kids, and now I literally speak in front of thousands of people a year, typically with flip-flops on. Okay? So you can do this if you're consciously aware of it. Just drag it out, look at it, recognize that it's BS, and it will dissipate and go away. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is focus. Wherever your focus goes, that's where your energy is going to go, okay? And I will tell you, some of the most successful people on the planet have the highest degree of focus. But here's the thing, whatever you focus on gets larger, both positive or negative, right? It would have been easy for me to focus on losing 50 million. I use it to teach, but that's not what I want to focus on. I will tell you, I get people who call me and say, how do I get out of student loan debt? And I'm like, wrong question. How do you make so much money that debt's irrelevant is the right question, okay? They asked Mother Teresa when she was alive if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace. I mean, you get the dynamic there, right? Focus is super important. And so I was mentioning my podcast. It's called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing, and it's the largest real estate podcast really on the planet for commercial real estate. I think I'm pushing almost 30 million downloads. And I bring this up because I listen to two podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan and I listen to Tim Ferriss because I try to stay on both sides of the aisle. I'm definitely on the one side, and it's not Tim Ferriss's side, but on Tim Ferriss's show. And that, by the way, the reason I bring them up is they're about 30 million downloads a week, okay? So just to give you some context. But on Tim Ferriss's show, he interviews the best of the best on the planet, like the best athletes, like the swimmer Michael Phelps, NFL players, NBA players, actors like Jamie Foxx, Ed Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold, billionaires like Ray Dalio, heads of the biggest companies on the planet like Zuckerberg. And he deconstructs their success, and it's fascinating intellectual conversation. However, I did an analysis, and 85% of the people on that show meditate. What does meditation enhance? Focus, right? Focus is so freaking important, guys. So make sure you manage your focus, because I don't know about you, but I'll be sitting watching Netflix, and I'll be scrolling on my phone through social media, which kills your freaking focus. So pay attention to that. Now, the next piece I want to talk about is playing to your strengths. Now, in my business, commercial multifamily, if you're going to buy a 100-unit, 200-unit, 300-unit apartment complex, you're going to be on a team. It's a team sport. You're not going to do it by yourself. But the key is that you've got to play to your strengths. Your strengths are your greatest assets, okay? Don't try to maximize your weaknesses. You will hit success much faster when you focus on your strengths and then you align, you hire, or you partner for your weaknesses. Some of the best partnerships that I see are an analytical person doing the numbers and an outgoing person like Rod, who's the mouthpiece in his relationships. And that's a match made in heaven when you've got both those. Because, in our business, you've got to develop relationships with investors and partners and sellers and brokers, but you also have to do the math. So again, you want to play to your strengths. Here's why. Because when you love what you do and you're working with somebody else that loves what they do, success is inevitable. Okay? So, find out what your strengths are. Ask your friends, or you can do an online Myers-Briggs profile or a DISC DISC profile. Figure out what your strengths are. Don't live someone else's life. Okay? Because when you're playing to your strengths, you never work another day in your life because you love what you do, right? And you're in the zone. And obstacles are no big deal because you love what you do. And here's what's really important. You're passionate. When you love what you do, you're passionate. And passion is required to influence people. When you operate from your passion, people want to be around you, and success in anything requires your ability to influence. So do what you're good at, your strengths. You'll be passionate and you'll be able to influence people. Passion always, it's also the fuel, okay? It's going to get your ass up in the morning and stay up late and, get up early and grind for a few years like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. That's what passion does. So don't play small. Figure out what juices you, inspires you, and do that, because that passion breeds creativity, it breeds innovation, and it greatly minimizes, if not eliminates, fear. So the next thing I want to talk about is who you hang out with is who you become, okay? I.e. the power of your peer group. I mean, you show me your 3 best friends, I'll show you who you are in every aspect of your life. Your health, your happiness, your relationships, and definitely your finances, okay? And most people default to peer group that they went to school with or that they work with. And those people may have their own fears and limiting beliefs, and they'll hold you back because they're afraid of losing you, or they're afraid of feeling less than if you succeed. And here's the thing, you want to get around people that think what you think is hard is easy. That's why my warrior coaching program is so successful, because the rising tide lifts all ships. You know, people, you want to be around, and by the way, if you're interested in any of this stuff that I do, go to my link tree. It's rodslinks.com. Rods plural, links plural.com. And there's a bunch of free stuff there. I have a goal setting workshop there, actually. It's down at the bottom. There's a guide you can download. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Or people spend more time planning a freaking Christmas party than they do designing their lives. And doing your goals is designing your life. Have your spouse do it. Have your kids, if they're over 10 years old, do it. But anyway, that's at rodslinks.com. And if you want to check out what I do, my boot camp site is there, and you can apply to my coaching program. There's tons of free books and stuff there. But anyway, peer group. Who you hang out with is who you become. And so, you know, you have naysayers in your life, and sometimes it's family. And I'm going to tell you, love your family, but proactively choose who you allow to influence you. Super important. You know, the last piece I want to talk about is the most powerful emotion we have available to us. It's how we manifest everything we want in our life, and that's gratitude. Gratitude makes us stronger when we face adversity. It strengthens our immune system. It makes our heart stronger, lowers our blood pressure, and even brings us closer to our spirituality. But it's also how you attract everything you want in your life. And so, you know, most mornings I will sit in my recliner and I'll just be grateful for the people in my life, the people that I love, and then I'll do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them. And I'll tell you, I've gotten emotional being grateful for things I don't even have yet. And some of you analytical ones are going, oh, good God, he's in foo-foo land. Well, this is how I had $50 million to lose and how I got it back, so ignore it at your peril. Podcast is called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. Like I said, it's the largest really in the world, which just blows my mind. And we talk about every type of commercial real estate, buying apartment complexes, buying senior housing, which I'm into now. I'm buying my second assisted living facility, self-storage. My students have thousands of self-storage units, mobile home parks. My students have a bunch of those. My students have a ton of senior housing as well. But we talk about all that on my podcast. And mixed use development, flex space, building, you know, developing and building properties. It's all on my podcast, and you'll get a ton of value. So it's called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. And every week I do a motivational clip. It's like 3 to 5 minutes. You give me 3 to 5 minutes, I will juice you. I will motivate you. And it's a different one every week. There are hundreds of them there. And so even if you're not interested in real estate, I'd encourage you to go check it out. And by the way, the link to my podcast is also at rodslinks.com. And my bootcamp site is there. My podcast link is there. There's a ton of free books there. My goal setting workshop is there. All my social media is there. So again, just remember, and if you're driving, text the word links to 72345. Okay, but it's rodslinks.com, and just a ton of free resources there. And I know you'll get value from my podcast and or that link tree.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.